Today we're going to chapter 13 of SD 48. SD 48.13 Ananda Subha Sutta. This is the famous Subha Sutta in the Digha Nikaya, D10. Digha number 10. As you know, the Digha Suttas, they're usually very long. And basically they present the best that Buddhism has to offer to the public. But this is one teaching which is quite profound. In fact, this teaching is very close. It parallels the Samanyapala Sutta, D number 2. Now, if you have studied the Samanyapala Sutta, you might notice the sutta was taught by the Buddha. It's a very long sutta. But this is a shorter version, very succinct. Samanyapala means the fruits of reclusion, the benefits of the holy life. So in the Samanyapala Sutta, the Buddha gives a very elaborate teaching on the benefits of the holy life, of renunciation, of becoming a monk or a nun. But here, only the section on the Samanyapala, that is the 3 trainings, are given. Subha is a young Brahmin. His father has passed away, so he's now the leader of the family, and also a very important man. So he meets Ananda and asks for teachings. And Ananda speaks of the 3 trainings. This event occurs soon after the Buddha has passed away. So here we see Ananda, now an Arahat, carrying on the Buddha's teaching. So let's look at this sutta, which acts as a reminder for us to look at the basic teachings of early Buddhism. Page 149, the Discourse to Subha by Ananda. The original title is simply Subha Sutta, but there are quite a number of other Subha Suttas, so we try to disambiguate this one. We try to make this more unique by adding the prefix in the Pali, prefix Ananda, because the teacher is Ananda. But in the English translated title, we have the Ananda as a suffix. The Discourse to Subha by Ananda, D10. Thus have I heard that one time the Venerable Ananda was staying in Anathapindika's park in Jeta's Grove, outside Savatthi, not long after the Blessed One had passed away into final nirvana. Then the Brahmin used Subha Todeya Putta, or in Pali, or his full name is Subha Manava Todeya Putta, addressed a certain boy, so this is the servant. Come now, boy, approach the recluse Ananda with this word of mine, asking after his health, that he has good health, mental ease, vigor, strength, and comfort. So he sends a messenger to invite Ananda over for a meal and then ask for teachings. So this boy goes to visit Ananda with a message. But that day, Ananda is unable to come because he is not too well. He has taken some milk with some laxative, some kind of purgative, because he has been sitting too long after the Buddha passed away. As you know, he is the personal attendant of the Buddha, so while the Buddha was alive, he had a lot of work to do. But once the Buddha has passed away, he had less duties, so he was more sedentary. So he was kind of taking some kind of medicine to just relax his body, heal himself. So he tells the boy that he is not able to make it that day, but he'll visit Suba the following day. And then the next day, early in the morning, he visits Suba. So the story starts there. The teaching is going to start very soon. So they meet, Ananda meets Suba, they exchange friendly greetings, and then he sits down in the prepared seat. So here you can turn to page 151, right at the top. Sitting thus at one side, the Brahmin Subha Todayaputta, the Brahmin youth, Subha Todayaputta, said this to the Venerable Ananda. The Master Ananda had for a long time, being the Master Gotama's personal attendant, often in his presence, living near him. The Master Ananda would know what teachings or dharmas that the Master Gotama spoke in praise of, in which he would rouse, instill, and establish this generation, Imam Janata, this generation, or the current people, if you like. And now comes the question, the key question on which the sutta elaborates. What Master Ananda are the teachings that the Master Gotama speaks in praise of, and in what does he rouse, instill, and establish this generation? Okay? So in other words, to simplify the question, Subha asks Ananda, what is the key teaching of the Buddha? Now, it's surprising actually, Subha should ask this kind of question because he has been meeting the Buddha quite often in the past. But the problem is, whenever he meets, he would debate with the Buddha. So in a sense, he wants to know things, but at the same time, being very learned young man, he's also very, he's kind of, he would try to defend himself also. So in a sense, he's also learning, but his own learning is slowing him down, so to speak. But nevertheless, he's making some progress, as we will see at the end of this sutta. So here he asks Ananda, what is the Buddha's basic teaching, key teaching? And Ananda replies by number one, giving a summary, and then the rest of the sutta is an elaboration of this teaching. So you see here, the structure is very simple. First part, very short, relatively short, talking about the social aspects, how Ananda was invited and then meet Subha, and then they chat and so on. So Ananda replies, 1.6, the Blessed One, young Brahmin, Manava, speaks in praise of the three aggregates. Whenever you see here three aggregates, it refers to the three trainings. You say five aggregates, it talks about the five mind and body factors. It is here that he rouses, instills, and establishes these people. In what three? The noble aggregate of noble virtue, Arya Sila Kanda. The noble aggregate of mental concentration, Arya Samadhi Kanda. And the noble aggregate of wisdom, Arya Panya Kanda. So notice the qualifier here, we have Arya. So in other words here, we're not just talking about any kind of moral training, mental training, and wisdom. We're talking about the three trainings that lead to awakening. Of course, anyone can follow this, not just monks and nuns, but also lay people like us. So now we have a dialogue, because the Diga Nikayas, basically all the suttas, there are dialogues. So now Subha asks Ananda, but what Master Ananda is the noble aggregate of moral virtue that the Master Gotama speaks of in praise and rouses, instills, and establishes this generation in? So there are three things here, so Subha asks one by one what they are. So here you can see this translation we have divided up into the three parts. So let's look what is the main part, the first part. The first part you can see big A, moral cultivation. This is the sila, or if you like, this can be called the noble aggregate of moral virtue, if you like. Right? Here, I've just kind of simplified the heading. Now, so you can see it stretches quite long, up to page 158. The sutta paragraph number is 1.7 to 2.1. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is you see in this sutta there are two big numbers, 1 and then 2. So these are called banavaras. Banavaras are like it's a section for chanting. So in other words, they will chant and then they will stop halfway, right? So that's regarded as one banavara. Banavara means something like a round of chant, if you like. Then number 2 starts. Right? So the sequence is very interesting here. So the first part deals with moral training. Then the second part, you see 2.2 up to 2.20. Right, so there you can see the section on meditation. And then the third training, 2.21, towards near the end, it's quite a long one. The rest of the sutta is up to 2.39 or 2.38 rather. Okay. So you have here Subba asking Ananda, what is the noble aggregate of moral training? And then Ananda answers, and then Subba will say, wow, this is great, this is wonderful. But Ananda will say, oh no, this is not the end, there's still some more to come. In other words, moral training is just one aspect of the Buddhist training. It's not the end then. Then Subba says, wow, this is great, I mean, other teachers would say, this is our teaching, and they kind of are very proud of it. But in the Buddhist tradition, this is not the end yet, there's still some more to come. And then, what is it? Subba asks, and then Ananda says, okay, the next part is on mental training. And then Ananda elaborates on mental training, just as the Buddha did in the Samanyapala Sutta. And at the end of it, again, Subba asks, is that the end? And Ananda says, no, I mean, there's still one more step to go. And then Subba exalts, wow, this is great, this is wonderful. In other traditions, people just stop here. They say that's all we teach and that's it. But you have some more in the Buddha's teaching. And then finally we come to the third training, that is wisdom, training in wisdom. And at the end of it, Ananda says, okay, we have come to the end of it, that's it. And of course Subba is very happy that the teaching is now complete, and it's really everything is there. So this is the basic structure. Now, let us go back to the first part, moral cultivation, or the noble aggregate of moral virtue, Arya Sila Khanda. Again, here you can see this section parallels the Samanyapala sections 40 to 63, D243 to 63. So this part first begins with the presence of the Buddha in the world. In other words, there's a chance for us to renounce the world, to follow the holy life of the renunciants, of the early monks, early nuns, and renounce the world, right? So here the 1.7 says, here young Brahmin, there arises in the world the Tathagata, the Buddha thus come, Arahat, fully self-awakened one, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, well gone, knower of worlds, unexcelled trainer of temporal people, teacher of gods and humans, awakened, blessed. These are the 9 virtues. Having realized by his own direct knowledge this world with its gods, its maras or bad ones, bad tempters, and its brahmas or high gods, this generation with its recluses and brahmins, its rulers and people, he makes it known to others. So here, it may sound so like a platitude here because we've been hearing this so often, but the significance here is very deep. Ananda is saying, okay, here you have the Buddha, and he has taught the Dharma. It's available to everyone. Because in the other groups, the membership is restricted. Like a kind of a religious country club. And not everybody can join them. But here it's open to all. 173. He teaches the Dharma, good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, endowed with meaning and phrasing. He proclaims the holy life that is entirely complete and pure. The teaching is all that. And here, the next line talks about anyone can join. A house lord or a house lord's son, hearing the Dharma, gains faith in the Tathagata and reflects thus. Okay, here's now the reason why people renounce the world. They want to practice the Dharma more fully. The household life is stifling, a dusty path. The life of renunciation is like the open air. It is not easy living in a house to practice the holy life fully. In all this purity, like a polished conch shell. But if I were to shave off my hair and beard, put on the saffron robes, and go forth from the household life into homelessness. So this person decides to renounce the world. And then after some time, he abandons all his wealth and relatives, shaves off his hair and beard, puts on the saffron robes, and goes forth from the household life into homelessness. When he has thus gone forth, he lives restrained by the rules of the monastic code, the Patimokkha, possessed of proper conduct and resort, right? So, proper conduct and resort. His behavior is proper. Resort means the places he goes to are also proper. Certain places doesn't go to. So here, in other words, he has rules for himself, and he's not like a tourist. You won't see monks in the places for entertainment, markets, things like that, once lay people start going around. So you see, in other words, these monks, they only go out for alms in the morning, and they'll go back into their monastery or under a tree, they'll sit quietly there, meditating or learning the Dharma. This is the way of the early monks and early nuns, the way that the Buddha would have it. Having taken up the rules of training, he trains himself in them, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Right? So it's very careful, very conscientious. He comes to be accomplished in wholesome bodily and verbal deeds. His livelihood is purified, and he is possessed of moral virtue. Okay. Look again, every line here is talking about how good, how even perfect the early monks were. Accomplished in bodily action and verbal action. Right? Speech, body action, peaceful, inspiring. His livelihood also is purified. What is the monk's livelihood? To practice moral virtue, meditate, attain wisdom, be a symbol of peace to others, inspired. He's not a lecturer, he's not a gainfully employed person, he doesn't get a salary, he has nothing to do with money. So you can see today there's a very great divergence. Most of the monks today you see, they have become career monks. They have jobs, they have money, they have worldly things. So you begin to wonder, will they ever awaken in this life? They definitely have gone against the teachings of the suttas. Of course, here you may ask, why not we modernize Buddhism? Well, Buddhism, the Dharma is one thing we don't modernize. You don't need to change the truth. It's just like 1 plus 1 is equals to 2. We don't change that kind of rules, isn't it? Because it's so basic. And then you have fresh air all around us. We don't say, oh, let's change the fresh air. These are very basic truths. We don't have to change them. We need to change ourselves. Don't change the Dharma. We need to change ourselves. People would like to say, oh, we have to modernize, we have to change this, change that. The reality is they're not very interested in the Dharma. They want the Dharma to fit their lives. They want the Buddha's teaching to fit their lives. They want to use the Buddha's teaching for other purposes, other than self-knowledge or awakening in these lives. So here you have this really wrong, this cross-current, this thing, this whole process of wrong behavior going against the Buddha's teaching. So if you're caught up in this kind of situation, you have to get out of it as soon as you can. Otherwise, you get trapped into it, and not only will you not awaken in this life, but you'll fall into the lower states the next life for sure, into the realm of the animals, the pretas, the asuras, and the hell states. I mean, if you're stuck there, it's very difficult to get out of it, to evolve as a human being, as a spiritual being. So you've got to be aware of all this, not be caught up with the wrong direction that we go. So here, 183, he comes to be accomplished in the wholesome bodily and verbal deeds. His livelihood is purified, his possess of moral virtue. He guards the sense doors, is accomplished in mindfulness and full awareness, and is content. Then so this is a kind of summary. Then the details. This is this is a famous section called the moralities. You have 3 parts here. The first part is called the short section, and then you have from 1.12 onwards the medium section, and then 1.22 is the long section. This is the most ancient collection of Vinaya rules that we have. This was before the Vinaya days actually. These are basic rules which the monks would follow. We have looked at this many times before, so I'll just kind of summarize for you, right? So here the question that Ananda asks and then answers, and how young Brahmin is a monk accomplished in moral virtue. How does he keep up his moral training, right? So the first part talks about keeping basic precepts of not killing, not stealing, keeping to the rules of celibacy. In other words, for the monks and nuns, no sex at all, no talk about sex at all, and no thoughts about sex at all, in other words. The reason is simple, because they're going to be monks, they're going to meditate, they're going to let go of the body, because sex is about the body. So they're going to meditate, and with a mind that is joyful, they're going to take this super highway to nirvana, where the joy is a mental joy, not a physical joy, not sexual joy. So for that reason, they will be celibate. Then there is the layman's way of life, right, who enjoys sensual pleasures, but in the spirit of the 5 precepts. So with that kind of practice, we keep the precepts, we enjoy sensual pleasures within the limits of the precepts, we do it in a happy way, and then in this life itself, we attain stream winning, and we're heading for awakening within 7 lives. And he practices right speech, in other words, he avoids false speech, avoids derisive speech or slander, avoids abusive speech. It's not going to be very helpful. If you use abusive speech, you can spread the Dharma that way. And of course, no idle chatter, because it doesn't bring anything helpful. So in other words, the Dharma is, number 1, something true, and it is something that unifies people. Number 3, it is pleasant, peaceful to hear, and it is useful. So these are the 4 right kinds of speeches. And then there are other basic rules that a monastic would follow. For example, he abstains from damaging seeds and plant life, right? So this is because in Buddha's time there was a lot of agriculture, and he takes only 1 meal a day. He avoids singing, dancing, music, and watching shows. No TV, in other words. And he doesn't wear anything that beautifies himself. He doesn't use very comfortable throne-like seats, they make him drowsy and sleepy. He doesn't accept gold and silver. It's nothing to do with money, in other words. He doesn't accept any worldly things, fields, slaves, people, and he doesn't basically get involved with worldly things or transactions. So that's the short section. Then in the longer section, these rules are kind of expanded, more details are given. You can look through all this, what a monk will not do. So I'll just give you one example. For example, a monk doesn't amuse himself, right, playing games, and a list of games are given. But this is very interesting because we get a good idea what are the games that the children and people played during Buddha's time. So 115 says, whereas some recluses and Brahmins living off food given in faith are bent on heedless and idle games such as these: 8-row chess, 10-row chess, chess in the air, hopscotch, spillikins or jack straws, dice, stick games, hand pictures, ball games or marbles, blowing through toy pipes or playing with whistling games with folded leaves, playing with toy plows, turning somersaults or acrobatics, playing with toy windmills, toy meshes, toy chariots, toy bows, guessing letters drawn in the air or on one's back, guessing thoughts, mimicking deformities, and so on. Right? So you notice here, there's mention of guessing letters written in the back. So we know there was writing in the Buddha's time. So these are all very great social interests. But the monk abstains from all this worldliness. It's not that all these things are bad, not at all. It's rather these monks and nuns, they decided that they want to get awakened in this life itself, immediately. And then section 3, the great section on moral virtue. So you have the Chula Sila, Majjhima Sila, Maha Sila. Chula means small, Majjhima middling, and here great. So this is even longer still. They go into more details what are things that a monk would not do. For example, 1.23, whereas some recluses and Brahmins living off food given in faith maintain themselves by a wrong livelihood through the lower arts. So here this third section talks about wrong livelihood, which a monk should avoid. For example, determining lucky and unlucky gems, staffs, garments, swords, arrows, bows, and other weapons. So in other words, become like a fortune teller, something a monk avoids. Right? So you can see a lot of these things not practiced today. That is why you find many of these monks and nuns, they don't talk about suttas, because it contradicts what they are doing. And the more lay people know about the suttas, the more we know what the wrong practices are. So to know the suttas means we are putting Buddhism right again. And we want the kind of Buddhism that the Buddha taught, not the kind that is used for worldly business today or using for some kind of religious politics today. We want the true Dharma, in other words. So the suttas help us understand and to be able to experience the truly joyful and liberating Dharma. Then the next section is confidence to practicing all these moralities, 1.29. So Anda goes on and says, a monk, young Brahmin, thus accomplished in moral virtue, sees no danger anywhere, owing to his restraint through moral virtue. Just as a noble king has defeated all his enemies, and see no danger anywhere. So in other words, this monk feels very happy. Then of course, it doesn't end here. Okay? So another says this is the noble aggregate of noble moral virtue, or noble aggregate of virtue, if you like. But I think the noble should be with moral virtue. Okay? Just make a note of it. If you look at the front side in the introduction, is that the translation we use at the top? Okay, so now Subha and is listening. So now Ananda says 1.30. This young Brahmin is noble, is the aggregate of noble moral virtue that the Blessed One speaks in praise of, and rouses, instills, and establishes this generation in them. But here, young Brahmin, there is still something to be done. There is still something to be done, right? And this is the remark that inspires Subha. Subha says, wonderful it is, Master Gautama. This aggregate of noble moral virtue is fully complete, not incomplete. And yet, after all these wonderful things that Ananda has said, it's complete. And yet, says Subha, there is still, Ananda says there's still something to go. So he says, this is amazing, because in other religion, other groups, they probably say, well, this is all we teach. Then he asks, but Master Ananda, what is this next thing? What is the aggregate of noble mental concentration or meditation? And here Ananda goes on to explain, number one, how the senses are to be restrained in preparation for meditation. So you see here, moral virtue tames the body and speech, so that we can clear away the hindrances against meditation. So here, how do we do this? By understanding the nature of the six senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. This is called the practice of sense restraint. Let's look at the first one. Here, 2.2, second line. Here, young Brahmin, when a monk sees a form with the eye, he grasps neither its sign nor its detail. Right? This teaching is very famous, right? So in other words, the monk does not get caught up with sights all around. So it's not like a tourist looking around, ogling, and so on. So he dwells, so long as he dwells unrestrained in that eye faculty, bad, unwholesome states of covetousness and displeasure might overwhelm him. To that extent, he therefore keeps himself restrained. Right? Here, the sign is the first thing that catches our eye. After that, we turn and look at it, and we look for the details. So this happens with the eye, the ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. So everything is well restrained, even thoughts. So the monk, this is the first training of the mind. Next, the monk practices mindfulness and full awareness in every action that he does. Walking, sitting, standing, lying down, whatever action he's doing. Putting on the robes, eating, when talking, when silent, or even in the toilets. Everything is very mindful. Here again, we find this in the Satipatthana Sutta, for example. Right? And the next quality he practices is contentment, 2.4. And how young Brahmin is among content. And this is a very beautiful verse here. Here, young Brahmin, he is content with robes to protect his body, and with alms food to sustain his belly. And wherever he goes, he sets out only with these within. Right? So you can see the monk's life is very simple. I remember when I was a young monk myself, I carried with me to the plane my alms bowl and basic things in it. Right? But those days we had no terrorist problems, so nobody checked me and said, oh, what we got in there? I said, it looks like a bomb in this round, what do you call, bowl. And of course we have to carry our ropes, so we put it in the bag. But basically, the early monks don't even have a bag, they just, everything is in the bowl. They wear their ropes and everything else. The needle and thread, the belt that they wear around themselves, the 3 ropes, and then the water strainer. So altogether you have 8 things. including the bowl. So 2.5. Here, just as a bird, wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its burden, so too he is content with ropes to protect his body and arms to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he takes only these with him. Right? So a bird has 2 wings, and a mouse 2 wings, has rope and bowl. So in a sense, like for lay people, this refers to our basic needs, right? Clothing, food. Of course, these 2 things, they summarize actually 4 supports. Food, clothing, shelter, and health. Right? So if we have these 4 things, we can say our life is quite complete. And we can go on to do Dharma work. We can go on to make people happy. Now if we do that, then it's like as if we're living in a heavenly world, helping people to be happy with each other and not causing problems to others. So this is the benefit of wealth. If you have wealth, you are in a good position to bring happiness to others, to bring joy, peace, progress to your environment. Okay? So this is where, as Buddhists, we must be very careful not to fall into the capitalist trap. I'm not against any kind of economic system, but here we're talking about the capitalist idea or the money-based idea tends to tell us we have to measure people by how much money they have, what power they have, what is their qualification, and we become like asuras. We look at others, we say, oh, how much are you worth to me? I'm not talking about employment and the professional world. They exist on their own. We don't have problems with them. But what we are saying, if you're a Buddhist, someone comes to the temple and you look at this person and you say, how much are you worth to me? How much donation are you going to make? If you donate, then I'll talk to you. If not, well, you can talk to someone else. So that would be terrible, right? It would be very, it's like an asura realm. So here is where we accept people just as they are. They come, and when they do donate, it's out of joy and faith, and the donation is accepted with joy and faith for benefits of those who need them, and of course for the growth of the Dharma. So this is how Buddhist fellowship works, in other words. And then all this goes on to help us overcome the mental hindrances. We're coming closer to meditation now, overcoming the mental hindrances. So here the meditation instruction starts. Look at 2.6. This is the purpose of being a Buddhist, a real Buddhist who wants to overcome suffering on a more permanent or real basis, not a part-time basis. In a sense, it's like if you just come weekly to the temple, do your chant, and you have a problem, you consult some Buddhist counselor. It's like you are visiting a GP. But if you are serious to solve the problem, then you would visit a specialist, right? And you get problem put down completely. So here, 2.6, possessing this aggregate of noble moral virtue, this aggregate of noble sense restraint, this aggregate of noble mindfulness and full awareness, and this aggregate of noble contentment. He resorts to a secluded dwelling. Notice this living alone in the forest. You must be prepared. You don't just go out there and by that act, you try to build a charisma around you and tell people, look, hey, I live in the forest, meaning, therefore you should support me, patronize me, respect me, and so on. That's not the case. You have to prepare yourself well to live in the forest, to meditate and live the holy life. He resorts to a secluded dwelling, a forest, the foot of a tree, a mountain, a gully or gorge, a hillside cave, a cemetery, a forest, a remote forest or jungle grove, the open air, or a heap of straw. So these are places we can use for meditation. Returning from his alms round after his meal, he sits down, crosses his leg, keeps his body erect, and establishes mindfulness before him. So here you are. This is the famous instructions on meditation. abandoning covetousness. With regard to the world, he dwells with a mind devoid of covetousness. He cleanses his mind of covetousness. So this is the first mental hindrance to get rid of. So covetousness or sensual desire is the most common one, the key one. Then number 2 is the opposite, ill will and anger. Right? So they kind of, when you get rid of one, the other also goes away. Notice here it says, with regard to the world here refers to your senses, all the 5 senses. How we see the world. So we don't see the world with any desire. We see impermanence in it, letting it come, letting it go. We don't see with anger or hatred. Then number 3, abandoning sloth and torpor in the same way. And then 4, abandoning restlessness and remorse. And then number 5, abandoning spiritual doubt, any kind of doubt. Right? So these are the 5 hindrances. Now once you overcome that means you're on the way to getting mental focus, which we'll mention in a moment. But here, there's the next section. There are the parables for the hindrances. The first parable is about covetousness. Here it's like a man who has taken a loan, a businessman. He has taken back all his loans, no more owning anyone any money, so he's very free with his business. And so whatever profit he gets, he's very happy, and he can enjoy this profit for his family, his wife, his children, his house. And number 2, overcoming ill will and hatred is like someone recovering from a sickness. He's healthy again and can do whatever he likes, and we go jogging or whatever work he wants to do. He's no more sick. So anger is compared to sickness. Then the overcoming of sloth and torpor. It is like someone, here you have a prisoner who is free. He has finished his sentence, he's free. And those days, those times, sometimes when you owe people money, you might have to go to prison, or worse, become a slave. But here he's free. He's paid back all what he owes and so on. He can go wherever he likes. And then the next one is number 4, restlessness and remorse. It's like a slave who is free, liberated. Right? And the last one is overcoming doubt. It's like a merchant who has, with all his goods and wealth, he has come out of the wilderness where there are robbers and thieves and danger. So he's now safe in the city, so he can sell his things and enjoy wealth. So these are the 5 famous parables, and the 5 hindrances that are overcome. So once all this happened, in other words, the monk or the meditator's mind is peaceful, ready, what happens? Look at 2:14. Seeing that they have been abandoned, they here of course are the 5 mental hindrances. They have been abandoned within him, he becomes glad. For one who is glad, zest arises. For one whose mind is zestful, the body becomes tranquil. The one tranquil in body becomes happy. For one who is happy, the mind concentrates. Now this is a very important passage. You see this sequence of gladness, zest, tranquility, happiness, then samadhi. And then leading to the 4 jhanas, right? This flow of wonderful, happy energies. And then Ananda talks about the 4 jhanas. In the first jhana, the 5 factors are there. There's only a very, very limited thinking and pondering, or sometimes called initial application and sustained application. There's joy, there's happiness, and the mind is kind of unified, and in a sense of free from all the hindrances, enjoying mental solitude, first jhana. Then in the second jhana, any kind of thought stops, right? No more thinking, pondering, even in the subtlest kind. So the mind is totally joyful. In the third jhana, so here you see all these jhanas is letting go of various factors, the 5 jhana factors. In the number 1, there are jhana 1, first jhana, there are 5 jhana factors. The second jhana, you have thinking and pondering are gone, or initial application, sustained application are gone. Then third jhana, the zest is gone. You have pure joy, in a mental sense, very calm, very peaceful. Bodily comfort, you don't feel any pain. Then the fourth jhana, even that joy is gone. The mind has become so still, equanimity. That's the fourth jhana. Now, in the Samanyapala Sutta, you have again parables for the jhana, but here, to cut it short, there's no parables here. But here, I'm sorry, there is the parables here. The parables are given. Okay, so let me just quickly read through them. So in the case of the first jhana, someone in first jhana is like a bathman who's who takes soap and makes the soap properly, so that the soap bubble becomes one nice round ball, so to speak. So the joy of this person in this state is complete in that sense. Then in the second jhana, the parable is that of a lake with spring water welling up from within. Okay, and then all the channels are all closed, but no way the water can come in. So here is where the meditator has shut down all the 5 senses, and the joy is only from within. Then the next parable on the third jhana is like a pond of lotuses of different colors. And the lotuses are fresh and bright and moist. The water in the lake or pond feeds the lotuses well. And the last one is the parable of a man sitting wearing all white. He has washed himself, it's very clean. Now this one's interesting because you have to see someone wearing this white cloth, especially the Indian dhoti and all covered up. When you see from afar, you see this white radiance from the white cloth. So this last stage also, you have this mental radiance of the fourth jhana. So this completes the teaching on mental training. So here again, Ananda says, the teaching is, that's it here. And then the Subha is very happy, 2.19, he says, wonderful it is, Master Ananda, this aggregate of noble mental concentration is fully complete, not incomplete. But Ananda says, well, there's still something more. He said, and then, wow, although it's complete, there is still something more. What is this something more? Now, Ananda goes on to talk about the wisdom aspect, the aggregate of noble wisdom. In other words, the meditation now brings about some kind of realization, self-knowledge, direct knowledge, higher knowledge. So here you have the first, is called insight knowledge, 2.21. With his mind thus concentrated, purified and bright, unblemished, free from defects, pliant, malleable, steady and utterly unshakable, he directs and inclines it to knowledge and vision thus. This body of mine is form, composed of the 4 great elements, born of father and mother. He understands thus, nourished with rice and porridge, subject to inconstancy, rubbing, pressing, dissolution and dispersion. And this consciousness of mind lies attached here, bound up here. So this is the so-called vipassana. We really see ourselves for what we are. In a sense, in an important sense, this section talks about the overcoming of self-identity view. What are we really? This body made of 4 elements. There's no self in it. It's born of parents, not created by some god. And then you have to sustain it with some kind of material food. And it is subject to all kinds of suffering, right? And then there's a parable here of a beautiful beryl. Beryl is like a glass-like semi-precious stone. It's got a thread through it. So this is a kind of ancient parable for the nature of our body and mind. So you have this mind, body working together, and they're both impermanent. So the mind is very clear, and we see our body is made of the 4 elements in this way. So this is a kind of a basic reflection we should make. So this is very helpful to stream winning, by the way, in this section. And then we go a little deeper, where we talk about the mind-made body. So here you have a bit of psychic powers, if you like, mental powers. Here is where the mind is so focused, so energized, it's able to, the mind can be directed coming out of the jhana, and a mind-made body, an astral body can be formed. So this is where the body is able to move around. That's how the Buddha begins to know things, and he moves around. So it's like a swordsman who draws a sword from his scabbard. So, or a snake coming out of the slough. So this person who meditates can kind of emerge from his own body. So this is another one of the strange things which we don't know much of, but here is mentioned in the suttas. Then you have this next section, knowledge of the modes of supernormal power. These are the psychic powers. These are still mundane, first set of them. Psychic powers, here is where this meditator who has attained 4th jhana is able to do all kinds of psychic feats, like appearing, disappearing, multiplying himself, and so on. You often hear of this. Here the parable is like a skilled potter who is able to mold a pot in any way he likes. So here the meaning is that if you can control your mind, you can work wonders with it in the universe. Then the second psychic power is clairaudience, the divine ear, able to hear things far away. Well, this is not surprising, because if you, even in first timer meditation, one of the things we notice once you start meditating, you hear sounds very clearly. So by matter of trajectory, you find if you go on meditating like that, you begin to hear better. And you begin to hear even things people do not say. You begin to understand people better in that sense. So here it's like a man, the parable is like a man traveling along a highway, and this man hears all kinds of sounds. Right? Now then, psychic power number 3 is mind reading. So here this meditator is so deep in his meditation, attained 4th jhana, and then comes out of it. He's able to read the minds of others. Again, here it's no big deal really. If you are a meditation teacher, you find if you teach regularly, you begin to know whether your students can meditate or not, and you're in a better position to help them. But here with deep meditation, this power of mind reading becomes even more acute, it's able to work better. So here, the parable is like that of a man or woman who's fond of ornaments and is well dressed and is able to see whether he's properly adorned or not. Okay, it's a bit of a vain person. So the next one is the power of recollection of past lives. So he's able to remember where he went in the past, where he was reborn in the past life, what kind of life he led, what kind of food he took, the people he lived with, and so on. So he's able to recall his own past life. So this is the kind of endorsement of rebirth. And then the 5th knowledge is the knowledge of the death and rebirth of of beings, or the divine eye, he is able to see how karma works. Someone does bad and then is reborn bad, someone does good and reborn good, and so on. So this is the, oh yes, the previous, the one on the knowledge of recollection of past life, the parable is of a traveler. The traveler moves from village to village and he sees things. So that's the parable of rebirth. In the case of knowledge number 5, the divine eye, and knowledge of karma, in other words, you have the parable of someone standing up in a high, like a high building, looking down on the city square. You have a crossroads there, and you see people moving, what the people are doing. So here we have a better idea of how karma works, in other words. Then comes the most important knowledge of all, number 6. That is the knowledge of the destruction of the mental influxes. Here is where we begin to understand also the Four Noble Truths, the nature of suffering. And once you understand the nature of suffering, you also understand the nature of the four influxes, or rather the nature of those things that bring us suffering, keep us caught up in samsara, go on suffering, in other words. So another way of looking at this is we are basically aware of and we understand and we know how to apply the Buddha's method of problem solving, which is the Four Noble Truths. Number 1, you know what the real problem is. Number 2, how this problem arises through many conditions. And then the ending of it, removing the conditions, or nirvana, and then actually doing it. So now Ananda says, now this person becomes an arhat, having known all these things. Look at 2.36, next page. No? His mind, thus knowing, thus seeing, is released from the influx of sensual desire, the influx of existence, the influx of ignorance. Now the old list has got only 3 influxes, okay? Sensual desire, existence, ignorance. Then the later list, especially in the commentaries, you find views is added in, okay? But here, of course, you can include views under ignorance, if you like. So the smaller number, the older the teaching, so to speak. So he has broken, or he has overcome these 3 influxes of sensual desire, existence, and ignorance. Release, there is the knowledge, release am I. So this person knows, I'm free. He knows that birth is ended, the holy life has been lived. Done is that which needs to be done. There's nothing further beyond this. So if you are enlightened, you know you are enlightened. In fact, if you really seriously practice Buddhism, there comes a point in your life where you will tell yourself, oh, I don't think I want to do this bad thing. It's not really worth it. You know it's not worth it anymore. So your realization is beginning. Slowly it goes deeper and deeper. Right? So you begin to understand, yes, you're progressing in that way. So here, this is called the aggregate of wisdom, the noble aggregate of noble wisdom. And so Ananda says, well, this is what the Buddha teaches. So now, but he says, but here, there's nothing more. Everything is finished here. So finally, Subha is very happy and he says, wow, this is really wonderful. And everything is complete and now there's nothing more to be done. And then he takes refuge in Ananda, or in the Buddha rather, with Ananda as the witness. Remember, all these people, they never take refuge in the monks. Some of them try to do that, but the monk will correct them and say, you take refuge in the Buddha. You take refuge in the Dharma, in the Sangha, not in me personally. So this is very important to know. We never take refuge in any teacher. We do not take refuge in a teacher. The teacher is the witness to our taking refuge in the three jewels. Because teachers are human beings and they have their witnesses. So if you take refuge in someone who is weak, you won't be able to grow, in other words. So here, Suba takes refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha, the noble Sangha, the Sangha of the great saints. So the sutta ends there. The Suba Sutta. Right, so that's just nice, the timing. So let us do a short reflection now. Whenever we study the suttas, it is as if we come before the Buddha himself. Again, to look into the behind the words, what the Buddha has taught us. And in doing so, we can see the wonderful flow of the Dharma, the truth, the teaching, the peace, and the freedom. This is what the suttas provide us with. And that is why we need to constantly do this so that we are reminded of what is right and happy and good in life. We are not discouraged and troubled by what is the opposite. In doing so, then we will be able to be happy ourselves and be able to help others. Reflecting in this way is wonderful good karma. By the power of such reflections, may we in this life itself attain mental peace, success in our work, and enjoy true happiness. Above all, may by all the good deeds we have done, our faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, our generosity, our desire to be liberated in this life itself, to attain stream winning at least in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us send out our loving kindness to our teachers, those who have taught us, those who have been kind to us, our loved ones. May they all be well, may they be happy. And also to those whom the Dharma have not touched, that they may see the Dharma in this life itself, that they may be well and happy too. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.